Hey there, Sarah here. I'm reading Plato and a Platypus, Understanding Philosophy Through Jokes by Thomas Cathcart and Daniel Klein. So I'm on chapter 1, Metaphysics. And we're talking about rationalism. They're talking about Leibniz's idea, philosophy, that this is the best of all possible worlds. This is something that many philosophers have made fun of. For example, the very famous book, Candide, is basically just making fun of Leibniz, where you've got the boy who travels around and sees all these horrible, horrible things, and his mentor, Dr. Pangloss, who is basically representing Leibniz, just says, everything has a reason that it is this way. This is the best of all possible worlds, and he never stops saying that, even to the point of stopping Candide from saving another man's life because he says, no, he was meant to drown. It's the best of all possible worlds. So in this book, they argue that Voltaire's Candide and some other movies or literature that have kind of played with this idea really miss the point of Leibniz's actual rationalism for why this is the best of all possible worlds. So he wasn't just throwing it out there. He's a rationalist. He had reasons. So in the book, they give the 4-step summary of Leibniz's theory. So I'll read that to you. There would be no world at all if God had not chosen to create a world. The principle of sufficient reason says that when there is more than one alternative, there must be an explanation for why one is the case rather than another. That's point 2. In the case of God's choosing a particular world to create, the explanation must necessarily be found in the attributes of God himself, since there was nothing else around at the time. That's the third point. And because God is both all-powerful and morally perfect, he must have created the best possible world. If you think about it, under the circumstances, it was the only possible world. Being all-powerful and morally perfect, God could not have created a world that wasn't the best. And that's the fourth and final point in Leibniz's rational argument for why this is the best of all possible worlds. So my very first reaction to this, as someone who doesn't believe in God, was this is why philosophy can't find any answers, because we're still reading silly theories like this and taking them as credible. But as I thought about it more and looked past the God divinity thing, I thought, playing with this structure, you could actually maybe get a rational, reasonable way to explain why, from a certain point of view, it's very rational to say that this is the best of all possible worlds. So here's my try. So for point 1, instead of there would be no world at all if God had not chosen to create a world, let's try there would be no world as we understand it at all if the laws of science had not created that world and conscious life that could understand it. Point 2, instead of the principle of sufficient reason says that when there is more than one alternative, there must be an explanation for why one is the case rather than another. You could cite theories of evolution and fitness and say that based on evolutionary theories, attributes can only be maintained if they do not reduce fitness. And so, things that would reduce the fitness of our world would necessarily not maintain or last the test of time. So now point 3. In the case of gods choosing a particular world to create, the explanation must necessarily be found in the attributes of God himself, since there's nothing else around at the time. So since we removed God as our initial starting point here, we need to replace this and say, in the case of conscious life observing a physical world which is bound by the laws of science, the explanation must necessarily be found within ourselves. And of consciousness, since there is nothing else with which to understand the physical world we are trying to rationalize. So point 4, instead of because God is both all-powerful and morally perfect, he must have created the best possible world, we could say that because our world adheres to physical laws, it cannot be physically anything other than it is. And so our understanding of that world as good, bad, worst, or best, any kind of comparative or superlative form, relies necessarily on each individual's perception. And so, if you choose to believe it's the best of all possible worlds, then it is. And in the next moment, if you choose to do something to make it in what you think would be an even better world, then in that next moment, it is. Because you did that. And now that's part of the world. So, yeah, you could say that at any given moment, this is the best possible world. As each conscious, acting, and understanding, perceiving, living thing does its personal best. And when you think about it, really, doesn't each person always do what they think is best? So, maybe Leibniz isn't like totally off. But I gotta say, we really need some new ideas here, some new theories. It's not enough to just reread all of these old, dusty ideas. We need people who come from a completely new, current perspective to start weighing in on this stuff. Anyways, that's my little opinion piece on Leibniz's theories as presented and summarized by Thomas Cathcart and Daniel Klein in Plato and Platypus Walk into a Bar.